Divorce and separation are a difficult process, but it doesn't have to be. Where do you start? How long can you support a loved one going through it? Here with tips on where to begin is associate lawyer at Shulman Partners, Laura Paris, is joining us this morning. Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Laura, it's so good to have you here. Listen, nobody wants this to happen in their marriage. That's why they got married. They wanted it to last. But the stats, oh my gosh, they're staggering. Talk us through where divorce rates are right now in 2023.
So right now, they're sitting at about 50%. I think it depends on the age group that you're looking at and whether it's a first or second marriage. But on average, we are at 50%. And unfortunately, that number seems to be holding strong. And if not only holding strong, but actually increasing. So it's it's an unfortunate reality that we're dealing with, but a reality nonetheless, which makes it just as or super important for people to kind of understand how to approach these things, because they're absolutely not easy times to deal with, and you want to make sure that you have the right supports in place and you're handling in the best way possible.
60% of second marriages, 60%, so even higher. Of the second marriages. Yes, get divorced. But couples aging 50 and more have a divorce rate of 26%. So if you're 50 or more, then you only have a 26% chance because you're older.
Maybe a little wiser.
Interesting.
More life experience. I don't know. Again, I don't want to be the judgy person here either, because to project your opinion onto anyone's relationship is a complete mistake.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. All right.
Wow.
So Laura, back to the stages here. Let's start at the base level. One or both sides of the relationship decide it is time to separate. What should they think about?
I think the first thing that you want to try and do is make sure that you're having that conversation with your spouse. And I know that that kind of sounds like an obvious piece, but I think it's something that does often get missed in terms of having that respectful sort of conversation. A lot of people, when they're dealing with separation, of course, approach it from an emotional level and sometimes avoid having those hard conversations and trying to deal with things with their spouse. And the first thing that they'll do is either tell somebody else, so their spouse is finding out through a third party, or engage a lawyer right away, which could be quite aggressive and could really start you off on the wrong foot for the separation.
So when do you speak to a lawyer then?
I would say you could speak to a lawyer really at any stage. I wouldn't have the lawyer necessarily be the initial contact that you have with your spouse regarding the separation, but a lawyer could be helpful at any stage. They could be helpful at the point of you just contemplating the separation and just gaining an understanding of what does a separation look like? What am I going to have to engage myself in? What does life look like for me if I'm separated? I think it's always good to have that kind of initial conversation before you make any serious decisions. And then, of course, whenever you get to the point of you guys are on the same page about separation and you want to start negotiating or dealing with the issues for separation.
All right, so let's go through the negotiation, because, listen, I mean, deciding to separate is tough. Sometimes these negotiations are just as tough, if not tougher. It gets personal. There's kids involved. I can only imagine what that's like. Laura, what do people need to remember going into that process?
You want to approach the negotiations of your separation in a manner that you want to see kind of live out in your relationship with your ex-spouse. And I say that because in a lot of situations, you have kids, and these negotiations that you're dealing with on your separation is not going to be the last decision that you have to make together. So starting your separation on the right foot, as kind of difficult or contrary that those two concepts seem, is actually going to mean a lot for what your relationship looks like in the future. And again, when you have children, you want to try to maintain as positive of a relationship as possible. So we always try to approach negotiations from an amicable perspective, focus on what the law says, and that's where obviously you lean on your lawyer to guide you in the right direction. Don't try to fight the inevitable. And I think that that's one thing that tends to drag on family court cases, is that people don't want to accept what the realities are. So they fight based on emotion. They feel like they want to get revenge or some sort of payback of some sort. And really, all that actually really does is line your lawyer's pockets and doesn't really do much for you at the end of the day. So trying to focus on the issues, keeping things fair and amicable, really will help things move forward in a positive direction for the not only the negotiations, but your relationship on a long-term basis.
Yeah, it could bring out the worst in people. I've seen it with friends, colleagues. Okay, we're running out of time, but if you want to be a supportive friend or family member, what's one tip that you can give to people right now that they could do for somebody going through this?
So my number one thing is be a friend and not a lawyer. So you may have gone through situations on your own, but recognize that every situation turns on its own specific set of facts. So leave the professionals to give the legal advice and focus on just supporting, being there as a support system for your friend. And a support system or family member. Support system can be as small as just being an ear for them to listen to, but also even helping out with maybe pickups and drop-offs for the kids, dinners for the kids, things like that, while someone's adjusting to a life that is much different than the one that they were living, a single life versus one where they had a partner to support them.
So hard.
Laura Paris is an associate lawyer at Shulman Partners LLP, shulman.ca. If you want more information, get in contact with Laura, an amazing firm. Laura, this is important stuff. We appreciate the time
Thanks,
today.
Laura.
And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
This conversation is going to keep